All right, this is week 13, sentence number 2. So I'm going to try to go slow so that you can do this along with me. And you can pause it if you are practicing doing this and so that you can try to answer some of the questions along with me. Okay, so our second sentence is, James saved me a cookie because he is considerate. So go ahead and write that down if you'd like to so that you can join along and then join me back. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is, well, I guess we would make any corrections, but this hopefully is all spelled and capitalized and punctuated correctly. I believe it is. So you're going to check the mechanics, and then you're going to go ahead and let's ask what the purpose of this sentence is. Is it declarative, exclamatory, interrogative, or imperative? All right, James saved me a cookie because he is considerate. This is just making a statement. It ends with a period, and so it is a declarative sentence. That is the purpose of this sentence. All right, moving on, we want to start looking for the structure. So remember, we have a couple little things that we look for. We may be looking for fanboys. The last video I said, maybe let's also ask, are there any prepositional phrases in this? Because those might distract us, okay? So I missed the last one. Let's look. James saved me a cookie because he is considerate. There are no prepositions. If we had found one, we'd put them in parentheses, okay? Now let's see. We don't have any fanboys here. Let's ask the question, are there any relative pronouns or any subordinating conjunctions? Our relative pronouns are words like our who, which clauses. There's some other words on there that you could be looking for. Or a subordinating conjunction. These are www.asia.wob words. When, while, where, as, since, if, although, whereas, unless, and because. All right. I do see the word because in our sentence. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to label it with a C because it's a conjunction, okay? Now, if we see one of these words, there's a good chance that it's going to be introducing to us a subordinate clause, okay? So let's look to see, because he is considerate. This is a subordinate clause. It has a subject and a verb in it, and it's being introduced by one of these things. Now, let's pause real quick and just remember that if it's being introduced by a relative pronoun, that's going to make this subordinate clause adjectival, meaning that it's going to be modifying a noun or pronoun, telling us more about a noun or pronoun. If it's a subordinating conjunction that's introducing the subordinate clause, it's going to be adverbial, meaning it's going to tell us more about a verb, which we'll just put that as a note because it will help us when we're diagramming later. Okay, so which one? We had because. Which one would it be? Adjectival or adverbial? We find because with our www words, okay? So that means that it's going to be an adverbial clause. Okay, so for our subordinate clauses, we're going to underline them 2 times. So because he is considerate is going to be underlined twice. Remember, a subordinate clause, it cannot stand alone. It doesn't express a complete thought. It can't stand alone. So if I just said because he's considerate, and that's all the information you had, that would not make sense. So it's a subordinate clause. Let's look at the rest of our sentence. James saved me a cookie. All right. There's a subject and a verb there, and it does make complete sense. So we're going to underline it 1 time to show us that it's an independent clause. Now remember, a subordinate clause, it has to have an independent clause to connect to. Remember a little image of a house? And it had a balcony on it. The balcony was our subordinate clause, and the house was the independent clause. You couldn't build a balcony without the house. It wouldn't be able to stand, right? So when we have a structure that has an independent clause plus a subordinate clause, what is the structure? It's our new structure that we were learning. It's a complex sentence structure. So that's the one you would check off if you're doing it on one of your analytical task sheets. A complex sentence. All right. Now we are going to take one clause at a time, and we're going to start with our independent clause. James saved me a cookie. Who or what is this clause about? Who saved me a cookie? James. James saved me a cookie. So we're going to put subject. James is a noun. SN for subject noun. All right. Now, what's being said about our subject? James saved. Okay, so we're going to put a verb over saved. Now, we'd like to figure out is anything receiving the action saved. So James saved what? James saved cookie, right? So we're going to label cookie direct object because it's receiving the action saved. James saved cookie. Now, don't be too quick and say James saved me, because did James save you or me? He didn't save me, he saved the cookie, okay? Now we're going to ask, I'll pause there. What kind of verb does that make saved if the action saved is being transferred to a direct object? It's going to make it transitive because it transferred the action to cookie, okay? Now we can ask the question, James saved cookie for whom or for what? Me. James saved cookie for me, right? That makes me an indirect object. All right. The only thing that we have left in this clause is A. A is an adjective. It's answering the question, which cookie? A cookie. So we're going to label A, J. It's also an article adjective. A and the are all article adjectives. I put it in a different color just because these are the labels that are relevant in our sentence pattern that we're going to be looking at. So what sentence pattern is this first independent clause? It's going to be SVTIODO. All right, now let's go on to our next clause, our subordinate clause that cannot stand alone. Who or what is this sentence about? Because he is considerate. Who is considerate? He. All right, so he is our subject here. He is a pronoun, right? It's replacing James. All right, now what's being said about he? He is. Now, before break, we memorized a really, really long list of linking verbs. Is should look familiar to you as one of your linking verbs. It's not an action, it's a linking verb. Remember, a linking verb makes an assertion by joining two words. And I'm not going to sing the list for you, but hopefully you maybe recognized is as one of your linking verbs. So that can clue you into asking the questions, is he being renamed or replaced by a word following a linking verb? So he considerate. Remember we did the little test where we would have to say that he equals considerate. And it would need to be a noun, right? A predicate nominative would be a noun. He's not being replaced, but is he being modified by another word following a linking verb? He is. We're describing he and saying that he's considerate, right? So considerate is a PA, a predicate adjective. And is a linking verb. Okay? So Does that make sense? It's a PA because it's an adjective. If it said he is a boy, we could say boy is he. Those would equal one another. It would be a noun. But considerate is an adjective. It's modifying. So now we can see the pattern for this clause down here is SVLPA. All right. So I think that's all of our words. Let's diagram this. Our first, now remember, our independent clause is always going to be the one diagrammed on top. So we have an SVT IODO pattern. So we're going to draw our horizontal line. SVT IODO is what that shape looks like for this pattern. These don't cross, or they don't intersect this line. So we're going to put our subject here, which is James. VT, our transitive verb, goes here. Saved. IO goes here. Me. DO goes here, which is cookie. And then we have one more word. It's modifying what? A is modifying cookie. Which cookie? A cookie. All right. Now we're going to do our subordinate clause here. This shape is SVLPA. So let's draw our horizontal line. And this shape looks like this. We always sort of have the subject predicate is separated here. And then PA is going to be a slanted line. And this slanted line points back towards our subject because it's relating whatever is on this side back to our subject over here. All right, so let's fill in these parts. Our subject is he. Our verb goes here, is. Our PA goes here, considerate. Can't write at the bottom of the board very well. And then we still have one more word to include in here. So if you remember, we pointed out earlier that this was one of our subordinating conjunctions is what introduced this subordinate clause to us. And subordinating conjunctions are adverbial. Adverbs modify what? An adverb modifies a verb, adjective, or another adverb. I believe, I could be wrong, I believe in most of these subordinating clause cases, it's going to be modifying the verb, okay? So that's helpful for us here because that's how we're going to connect these two clauses together, okay? So, but let's look at it real quick. Because he is considerate, what question is this answering? It's answering one of our adverb questions. Adverbs answer the questions how, when, where, and why, okay? So James saved me a cookie because he is considerate. We know that it's modifying a verb here, saved. Our saved is our verb in our independent clause. So it's answering the question, why? Why did James save me a cookie? He saved me a cookie because he is considerate, okay? So, to show that it's adverbial, we're going to connect with the little dotted line our verbs in these two clauses, okay? So we're going to connect saved to is, and you probably won't be able to see this, but if you can, great. We're going to write the subordinating conjunction on this dotted line, okay? If I can write sideways. All right, so it looks like that, and it's all done. And hopefully this was helpful or fun.